Hey, it's Coach Taylor from SmarterTeamTraining.com. I'm getting an opportunity to talk to a guy named Jim Malone, who spent over 18 years in baseball. And I know he's done a bunch of different things, working with the Professional Baseball Coaches Association and a whole bunch of other things, man. I know he's a Nolan Ryan Coach of the Year. I know he got a chance to work in an all-star game. I'm sure this dude has got tons of stories. I'll be honest with you. I reached out to Jim probably about 2 years ago via LinkedIn, and him and I went back and forth just having conversations. I wanted to get him on the show. I know he's done incredible things in baseball specifically, and he's also tried to give back to the field immensely to help his peers and even people beyond just baseball in general. And I hosted a clinic up in New Jersey, and I didn't even place a name or face or anything like that, to be very fair with everybody on the show, and even fair with Jim. We had a conversation about this maybe a week ago, and the Monday after the event, I looked at his business card, and he was great. It was very professional. He walked up, gave me a business card, which a lot of people don't bring to events, and I would encourage you to do that. And the picture just resonated with me, and I was like, man, this image just reminds me of somebody, but I don't know who. So I looked him up on LinkedIn. Lo and behold, the guy that I was trying to talk to on social media was actually at the event, learning from us, engaged in the event, contributing to the event. It just goes to show you, man, regardless of how long you're doing this, the great ones are going to continue to want to learn. And Jim, man, I compliment you for coming to the event. Again, I apologize for not even knowing who you were firsthand. Again, we've never met in person up until that point, and it's been great to connect with you since then, my man.
No, it was great. I really enjoyed coming to it. I just kind of flew in under the radar. I don't need to be broadcasting who I am or what I've done. There are a lot of great coaches out there. A lot of great coaches that are flying. There are a lot of great coaches working with high school kids, and so it's any chance I get a chance to learn a little bit more and do a little bit of networking. I try to take advantage of it when I can.
Jim, as you and I have discussed several times now since obviously meeting in person, my question to you often is where does your motivation, where does your passion come for this field, for even baseball in general? And I know you've worked with some other sports earlier in your career, but I mean, 18 years in baseball is a long time. And I play baseball. I got a chance to work at the minor league and the major league level. I can completely understand that 180-day plus or minus, if you want to count spring training and the postseason. I mean, that's a grind. I mean, what motivated you every day to come to work?
I really have a passion for being involved in the team setting. So, baseball, my career took me to baseball back in 1997. And I think if someone had told me then that I would have still been in it 18 years later, I probably would, I wouldn't have necessarily called them crazy, but I'm not sure that I would have believed that because my roots were in football and, in college athletics. I met a few people involved with the game, actually not even strength conditioning related, but, through their contact and talking to me a little bit about sort of the void that was there at that point in baseball. I saw some opportunity, so that's when I started doing a little bit of exploring and really sort of stumbled into it. And I was very fortunate that the organization I started out with the Cleveland Indians, they were one of the first, if not the first, organization that saw the value in putting a strength coach with every minor league team. So they had what they called it an internship program, but you were essentially, you were a full-time coach because you were with the team and doing everything day to day at the, in the minor league level. And it just sort of took off from there. Fernando Montes was the head strength coach there then. And, really he had a vision that the Indians allowed him to implement. And I was, like I said, I was just very fortunate that that's where that's sort of where I saw him latched on. And the impetus there was that their AAA team was the Buffalo Bisons, and I grew up in Buffalo, and I knew that maybe if I were going to be able to latch on with them, that I could essentially work on the cheap by being at home and go back to basically living with family if I needed to.
I want to talk from the strength training aspect from many different things, and I don't know if it's the superstition, the culture of baseball. There's some very unique things in the world of baseball that goes on as far as the strength training side of athletic development, we'll call it. Are there strength training exercises that you avoided in your program, or on the flip side also, are there strength training exercises that you encouraged in your program?
As far as sort of the avoidance, I think that there's still a big stigma to the, loading in anything overhead, any kind of overhead movements. I won't get into that. It's really a semantics thing, and I think that the issue is there's a sensitivity towards the volume of throwing that especially pitchers do, and it's hard to argue. I think that the risk, just like anything that you're going to do in your programming, there's a risk reward factor, and I think that the risk outweighs the reward. Not so much, that I have a problem with overhead lifting. After all, I mean, I do it, but I'm not a pitcher. It's it's sort of the what if something goes wrong factor, and in addition to the fact that they're already stressing that shoulder capsule with the volume of throwing, pitchers especially with the volume of throwing and the violence of the throwing motion. How much more are they really going to get out of that overhead loading type of thing? And because there's nothing that's within the game that I see being a huge benefit to doing it, then it's something I avoid. There are players that are capable of doing it and that have done it, and as long as I've seen them, maybe if I inherit a player through a trade or through a free agent signing, and he's done it and he's had no issues, then I'm not going to adjust his program backwards by taking it away from him. But I just don't think that it's really worth programming in, especially at the early levels, because the bottom line is, just like any type of training, the supervision factor, the athlete-to-coach ratio, you're going to have a little bit harder time with the teaching and the monitoring of all your players when you're running that programming out there. So, I'll adhere to sort of that superstition, just for the fact that I don't think the reward outweighs the risk. And as far as what I'm a strong believer in, squatting and lunging and doing RDLs. And again, sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to put a bar on their back, but the movement of squatting under load, I think, is hugely beneficial, especially early on, to create a great strength base, to create good overall mobility, and then adding in lunging and single leg squats, and then their hinging movements with their RDLs and single leg RDLs. I think that's basically the foundation, really, for any good ground-based athletic activity. So, that's generally what most of my program is going to center itself around.
If we're talking about the high school coach, or even potentially the youth model, and we'll call it that middle school, that pre-high school scenario, I'm sure you're getting a ton of emails. I mean, I got them in college. The high school coach wanting our college program, and I'm sure they were asking for the pro program to find out what you guys are doing unique. I mean, what are some concerns that or considerations that a high school baseball player or baseball coach needs to consider when developing their strength and conditioning program that may or may not be different in the college or pro environment? Just the development of the individual. I mean, how do you look at chronologic age versus training age and those types of things in your program?
I always sort of bad when I would get those calls or those emails, because I was more than happy to have a good conversation with the coach, but I wasn't going to just send him out the program, and it certainly wasn't because I felt like there was anything proprietary or super secret that we were doing. It was really just a matter of without having a knowledge of what basically the athletes that they were working with, it certainly wouldn't have been fair. And again, like you just referred to, training age and chronological age. What we're doing at the pro level, and basically you're just talking about athletes that are basically 18 to possibly mid-30s. You're making your adjustments even individually at that level based on what players can and can't do and what they're capable of, or what any kind of maybe orthopedic or past injury issues that they've got to that we have to deal with and work around. So I always felt bad because I didn't want them to think I was kind of what we refer to as big leaguing them by not being more willing to share the stuff. Again, I was always willing to have a good conversation and talk to them a little bit, because at that level, I mean, a lot of these kids, especially now, and I'm sure we're going to spiral off into this at some point with the early specialization. It's just really these young kids, they have to be taught basic fundamentals about training and moving and training under load and becoming proficient at the basics, and before they move on. It's just like in math, you have to learn addition, subtraction, multiplication and division before you can get into calculus and physics and the other the more advanced types of education and learning along that track. Well, it's the same thing for strength conditioning, and I think what we see is there's a lack of sound fundamentals. Sometimes when we get these kids especially when they're drafted at the high school age, just because there still is there's an inconsistency to the exposure that these kids get to it. So you have to figure out, when you're designing things from the ground up for your program, sort of what is your, how are you gonna start your base curriculum and try to get everybody as close to even as possible before they get advanced forward in what you're trying to do with them programming wise.
Because we're talking baseball players, and injuries are common parts of all athletics, and so we're always trying to figure out what is a weak link area of the body. We can talk about the elbow or the shoulder, but I want to know a little bit more even beyond that, if you wouldn't mind. But how do you address some of the key areas of the body that baseball players need to strengthen in order to perform their skill set or their activity over the long period of the season?
I look at an athlete and start trying to build from the ground up. So again, squatting, lunging, RDLs, then working on their posterior, they're continuing up the posterior chain to their back, doing back work and shoulder girdle work, and always being on them about good training, good form in the exercise they're doing, good posture when they're doing things. And just striving for balance. And I think that the game itself lends itself to the athletes becoming so imbalanced. I mean, pretty much everybody only throws with one arm, except for I know there's a pitcher with the A's right now that's an ambidextrous pitcher, but obviously that's he's the 1 in a million type of athlete. And for the most part, even batters that switch hit, they're still going to face more righty pitchers than lefties. So they're going to end up batting from the left side more than they bat the right side. So, how do we balance that out? So, we try to take that into some of the programming consideration, just as far as working for a more symmetrical and balanced athlete when it comes to their lifting, when it comes to their running, their conditioning, their agility drills, harping on good form, good body, again, good body position, using right foot, left foot, different leads, just whatever we can to try to create a more well-rounded athlete, aside from the inherent imbalances that are built into the game. And when it comes to some of the sort of what I would call the finer skills, finer motor skills, addressing the elbow issues, the shoulder issues, there's fortunately at our level, you've got athletic trainers that are involved, and I've been organizations that I've been with have always had full-time physical therapists. So you communicate, amongst the entirety of the staff, and you try to, you discuss what do you see, what have you seen through testing, what do you see through just watching the athlete play, where he may be deficient or imbalanced, and you start to address that as a group. And you sort of, there's a sort of a dispersion of responsibility as far as the total preparation for that athlete, and you just want to make sure you're not overdoing it or missing something as everybody sort of takes on that that responsibility of discussing what's in the best interest of the player to keep him whole, to keep him healthy, to keep him active, keep the best 9 players on the field, day in and day out.
You bring up ATCs and physical therapists, and obviously the role of the strength conditioning coach in that overall bigger picture. My mind goes to screening and how people are trying to potentially pre-identify an injury or an imbalance prior to an injury even occurring. When you meet with an athlete, whether it's through a trade or the draft or just coming up from the minor leagues with maybe potentially in the system, and you haven't seen him for a month or so because he went to AAA and came back, I mean, how are you potentially screening them or pre-screening them before you work with them for some things that you might be just able to pick up? Are you someone that takes them through an FMS, or are you having the ATC do that, or how are you getting that report?
There's a little bit that goes into that from every angle. There's always, we've used the FMS, I like what Gray and Lee do there. But it's, for our sport, like I said, there is going to be those guys are going to be pitchers in particular are just full of imbalances. Because of the nature of what they're trying to do. So when you're doing, the shoulder screen, their inline lunges, their overhead squats, there's a tendency that they all score pretty poorly in the same exercises over and over again. Looking at their shoulder mobility stuff, because there's going to be an imbalance between their right shoulder and left shoulder, right arm, right hip, based on the mechanics of their throwing. And you want to try to do what you can to get them as close to normal as possible, but you're combating years of repeated mechanics that have lent themselves to this imbalance. And I've always sort of been of the opinion, if you overcorrect that, are you doing the athlete a disservice? Which is obviously a debatable concept. And the athletic trainers, the PTs, they get the goniometers out and they put the guys on the athletic table and they start measuring ranges of motion in their shoulder, internal, external rotation, where they at as far as what kind of valgus stress do they have with some of the various measurements that they do. They're checking their hip, internal, external rotation. And I think I know that, for example, the internal, external rotation on the shoulder is one of the things that the athletic trainers look for and they feel is important. Isn't so much that the start and end range motion is identical from a symmetry standpoint. They just want it to be, for instance, if the internal rotation on the left arm is greater than the internal rotation on the right arm for a right-handed pitcher. If that external rotation, let's just say if it's 120 degrees from end range internal to end range external. They just want to see that being close to even on both shoulders, even though the end range external is going to be much greater than the end range external on the left, and the end range internal on the left is going to be much greater than the end range internal on the right, and that's just because of the cocking motion, the repeated cocking motion of the right shoulder. So what they're shooting for is sort of a general equality as opposed to an absolute equality, if you understand what I'm saying. So we sort of do that same sort of thing, but it's a little more cut and dry when it comes to actual strength. If a guy is can right leg lunge with, let's just say, using 80-pound dumbbells and can only left leg lunge with 40-pound dumbbells, then that's an issue, and that's the sort of thing that you're going to have to strive to get more balanced. The mechanics in baseball are so much more unusual, and the end result after years of playing are so much more different than, say, a more three-dimensional athlete like a football player or a basketball player. Then you find various levels of dysfunction that you're sort of comfortable dealing with. And then, so if I get a new player, I'm going to talk to him a little bit about what he does, what he likes to do, what he's been able to do. Is there anything he can't do? And then it's really going to be a little bit more about sort of observing him and, seeing what I see and then trying to correct as we go along. Because one of the greatest challenges in professional baseball is the fact that you're pretty much coaching on the fly all the time. Because those games are coming at 7 o'clock or 1 o'clock every day, and there's no way of getting around it other than talking to the manager or talking to the athletic trainer, and are there guys that need a little bit of a rest, need a break for some sort of nagging injury.
Generally speaking, the athletes, the baseball players, are going to come in and lift early in the day, or they're going to come in after their outing on the bump, man, and they're going to come in after practices or after games, depending on how the season's going there. I mean, what kind of recovery strategies are you using? Let's say if a guy lifts in the morning, I mean, how are you planning the rest of his day to prepare him to be full go by the time the first pitch arrives? Or on the flip side, if they're coming in after a short stint on the mound and they got to get some pitching in, but they might be live tomorrow, I mean, how are you working people through that recovery strategy?
That's part of the overall education process, really. You're talking to them about nutrition strategies. We have access to in the major leagues. Let's talk about the major leagues for starters. Obviously we're going to have access to more things. We've got a wet room. You got hot and cold contrast tubs. You're going to have, more than likely have a swim X of some sort. You've got every modality imaginable between, the Mark Pros and the Game Readies and the, any kind of ultrasound, icing, heat packs. And that's all going to play into the preparation and the recovery. So you try to get the players in the habit of doing certain things, and you're talking about their nutrition recovery strategy. So, if a guy comes out of a game, pitcher comes out of a game, and he's thrown, if it's a starting pitcher, he's going to have a cuff routine that he needs to go through to sort of get that posterior shoulder, sort of back in place after all that throwing motion is overstretched and taxed his rotator cuff and his rear delts and his scap and his the whole mechanical process back there, and they're going to do that rotator cuff program, strengthening program to sort of pull everything back into place. And then the athletic trainer may do some manuals with them, and then there's going to be the general ice down to get reduced inflammation, or use some of the other newer things that are out there that they've got for that. And then post-activity nutrition strategies, a recovery shake. Then they're probably going to eat dinner pretty quickly after that. So you're going to talk to them about making good food choices. Then about their sleep habits, their sleep patterns for recovery and pre-recovery. So that they're prepared, to come in and do the work that they need to do the next day. One of the biggest problems is all those great things that we've got access to in the major leagues, they don't necessarily have access to in the minor leagues. So, sometimes you look at the way things work, and it's like an upside down pyramid, because there's a vast, a very big, vast availability of great things available to you at the major league level, across all those different aspects. And then on the minor league side, that they're probably not going to have access to those things. So unfortunately, what happens is players start getting to the big leagues and they develop bad habits in the minor leagues because they just have not had access to the same sort of nutrition or the same recovery modalities, or even access to possibly a weight room if you're in low A ball and somewhere in the middle of North Carolina. You're trying to do things. It's like a patchwork quilt from the lower levels before they get to the big leagues, and then you're sort of sometimes you're reteaching them and relearning. They're relearning how to go about their day's business and what they've got available to them, prior to their game activity and post activity.
For anybody that's been involved with baseball or in athletics in general, road trips are a gigantic part of, especially the minor league experience. I'll just call it that. I mean, is there anything that you're doing to help an athlete maintain their sports performance routine when they're on the road? I mean, from a strength conditioning coach at the minor league level, are they calling ahead and setting up gyms? Are they trying to put in place things that they can do at the ballpark? Walk me through a little bit of that athletic development program for an individual when they're on the road.
It's more often than not what's happening there is you're probably doing your lifting early in the day pre-game. So you're making adjustments to the programming based on that. So a typical minor league day on the road might be, you might get in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's no sort of getting around it. You're probably going to have to get a couple guys into the weight room that very morning. So you're trying to manage that schedule, backwards from the time that they're going to be expected to be at the ballpark for batting practice and infield, outfield work, any kind of early work. So you may have a 10 o'clock or 10:30, bus to the gym. And at this point, it's less about needing to do it as an individual calling ahead, because basically every town or every city that you're going into, that home club is going to have made some sort of prearrangement with a local gym. There's generally one hotel that everybody stays at, so there's a gym that they're going to have access to. More often than not, it's a quote unquote global gym type of situation. So what you have to do from a programming standpoint is program things that you're going to be able to do on a consistent level. Are you programming things that are repeatable? Because you want to make sure that you can at least adhere as close as possible to the type of programming that you want to do. So you roll into the gym after a 10 or 15-minute ride over there, might be 10:45. Do some kind of warm up with the group, depending on, and that group size may vary. It may be, you may be doing it by position. You may be doing it by guys that played the night before. You may be just doing it by, hey, we're going to do a group lift or a team lift on Tuesday and Friday this week while we're on this 9-day road trip. So there are just so many different variables that come into play. And then you're going to, depending on the number of guys you got, you're going to hand them their sheets and they're going to get after it, and you're going to do sort of the best job you can as a coach, and keep an eye on what everybody's doing. You're teaching, everybody about a little bit of gym etiquette, helping your teammate with spotting, helping guys make each other be accountable. Then after 45 minute to an hour lift, you're going to roll out of there, get back to the hotel, talk to those guys about making sure that they get some food in them. Hopefully they had gotten something in them before they got on the bus. Talk to them a little bit about, hey, might be a good idea to take a nap, get off your feet. And then there's going to be a team bus going to the ballpark. You do conditioning at the ballpark during batting practice, before batting practice, because the likelihood is that you're not going to be able to do a lift afterwards, because most of the minor league parks, even though a lot of them these days have got a weight room, it's just probably not really going to be big enough to accommodate two teams in it like a Major League Baseball, like a Major League ballpark would be. So, there are a lot of moving parts to being a strength coach in the minor leagues, and it can be really challenging. And so you're trying to find guys that think well on their feet, talk to them about making good decisions as far as the adjustments they have to make. And then they're going to do it all over again the next day, ideally. And that's all predicated on the fact that you're going to play a 9-inning game in about 3 hours. You don't know if there's going to be a rain delay. You don't know if there's going to be extra innings. How long was the bus trip the night before? How long is the bus trip in 2 nights? Is it a night game to a day game? I mean, you're trying to stay on as close to sort of a schedule that you lay out as possible, and adhering to it, because disruptions to that schedule could affect your ability to get in a lift by as much as 3 days, depending on weather, game condition, game situations, and travel. So if you miss that lift on a Tuesday, you just may not be able to get another one in until Thursday or Friday, just based on the schedule and the situation.
For the young strength conditioning coaches coming up, and athletic trainers, physical therapists that want to pursue baseball, and then also from the flip side, the guys have been doing it for a while, and I don't care if they're in baseball or just in the field as a whole. I mean, do you have one big message for them as far as motivation and passion and continuing to chase their dream, or to chase what their expectation for greatness is?
Just like anything, you better love what you're doing, because this game, it's not a regular. It is very far removed from a regular job. I mean, I think any strength coach job is, obviously, college situation, multiple teams, multiple responsibilities, possibly more than one weight room on campus that you have to deal with, depending on indoor sports, outdoor sports, size of the programs, and baseball. I've had coaches reach out to me in the past and say, hey, baseball is my passion, and I'd really like to get into it. And it's not that you're trying to paint them a grim picture, but you're trying to paint them, a realistic picture. So when they make a decision about what they want to do, that it's an informed decision. I think in general, anybody that's committing themselves to this profession, they clearly have a love of what they're doing and working with people. I think then it's just a matter of maybe finding the sport or sports that you care about the most, that you have the greatest connection to, maybe that you have the greatest feel for, and then working to get yourself involved and ingrained in those sports. Baseball. Again, some people, and I think that you have to decide sort of other factors in your life, and how those are going to play into your long-term plans as a person, as a human being. Do you want to, you're going to expect to have a wife? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to have kids? Where do you prefer to live? Because that sometimes those decisions are made for you in our profession, and are you going to be willing to sort of roll with it as they happen, or do you want to do what you do and find sort of one place to do it and set down your roots? There are a lot of people I know a lot of good coaches that are very because of other life decisions that they've committed themselves to. They're very happy at a high school or a Division III program, and they're some of the best coaches I know. You run along across a lot of people, and ideally you surround yourself with good people, but everybody's got to make their own decision as far as what they really want to get out of life and out of the profession, and finding the best balance between the two. So it's you want to factor those things in when you're making a decision, and then try to find the place that's going to put you in the best position to succeed. Because I think the one thing, the other thing that I'll put along with that is when strength coaches get frustrated because sport coaches come to them and they put either what may be a little bit unrealistic expectations, or they want something included in the program because they heard so and so was doing it. You have to find a way to balance that out with what with what your principles are, your personal principles and your training principles. Because the thing to remember as a strength coach is that those athletes that you're working with every day, while you like to call them your athletes, they're really not your athletes. And that is something that I think is important to remember when you're dealing with the sport coaches or the head coaches. Those are the coaches that went out there, that recruited them. They're the coaches that sat in, parents' living rooms and made promises to them. Those are the coaches who, they get stressed out when there's a losing streak or things are going wrong. In professional sports, it's the GMs and the head coaches and the scouts that go out and find those guys. You're part of even as the head strength coach, you're part of something bigger. So you have to find a way, beyond communicating with your athletes, you have to find a way to communicate with those people around you. And I often talk about, you don't just educate down to the athletes or across the athletes. You have to educate up to the people that you work for and work with around you.
Well, Jim, man, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day here to talk shop. I appreciate the professionalism and the persistence as far as trying to get you on the show here, man. It was great to actually get a chance to shake your hand and meet you in person. I'm looking forward to hopefully, talking and communicating much more often now that we know each other. And I'm sure this is going to be a cool friendship moving down the road here. If somebody has any questions about anything we discussed here on the show, or maybe they just want to reach out to you for their own professional development, networking type scenario, how could they go about finding out more information about what you have going on and connecting with you personally, man?
Just like everybody else, I'm subject to the social media world, so I've got my Twitter thing going. It's J Malone Strength, on the Twitter handle, and I'm not cool enough to have a website. I don't have anything to sell, or I haven't been, I've been so involved in just coaching that, I don't have a website. But really, LinkedIn is probably the best way to track me down, and then. We develop, answer a few questions or start to develop a little bit of a relationship, then I'd be more than happy to share some of my personal contact information. But LinkedIn, just like you reached out to me the first time, is probably the best way to do it. And it's just Jim Malone on LinkedIn. Find the bald guy, who's a strength coach on LinkedIn that's Jim Malone, and that'll be me.
Well, anybody listening here, I'll be honest with you, that's exactly how I did it. I got a chance to have a conversation with a couple different people. I could not find Jim's email address. I just happened to connect with him on LinkedIn, and same thing, man. Just shot him a message. A couple of days later, we started going back and forth, and then hopefully a cool friendship's going to occur because of that, man. The good ones will make time to give back to those who reach out to them to just ask a better question and hopefully develop better responses moving forward. So, again, Jim, man, I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk and learn from you, my man. Again, I'm hoping this is a launch pad for us to do many more things down the road, and I'm looking forward to sincerely keeping in touch, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I really appreciate the opportunity. I've enjoyed it, and like I said, it was great being at the clinic in New Jersey. I think you guys do a great job, and I encourage everybody to, when they can find some time or the travel time and get there to go and participate in it.